every article written about this said no royalties. You saw it yourself. Spotify will not be paying any royalties. When in reality, of the 3 royalties that they typically pay, they will only stop paying one.
It is the biggest one, though.
It's
Right
the
now.
biggest one. I don't give a What's going down? It's the At Odds podcast with EP&D, Erinn, Payne, and Dame. What's going down, everyone? I'm ready to rant, but obviously before I rant, and just to be clear, the rant is going to be about streaming, since some folks think I can't speak on streaming for some reason, because I guess I'm in the pockets of Daniel Ek and the other evil war profiteers out there that run these companies. I don't know. It's not. I don't know what kind of money you think I'm tied up in, but I can say whatever I want. However, we are offering still 3 months of free music distribution. Just because I criticize the streaming platforms doesn't mean you shouldn't distribute your music. And we can give you 3 months using the code PAIN on 2Lost, which is a premium distribution platform. And it's not a trap. It is 3 free months. And then after that, subsequent months are only $2.99. That's it. And I believe if you get an annual membership, it's even cheaper than that. So if you are thinking about distributing your music, or you're thinking about trying a new platform, 3 months is plenty of time. So hit up 2lost.com, use promo code PAIN, and get 3 months free.
Before you rant, just a quick update. Also, we have the Collab for the Crown contest going.
Oh yeah, how could I forget about that? Win a ton of money,
where you can win a portion of a prize pool of $33,000. It's co-hosted by T-Pain, so you can check that out, 2lost.com/collab for the crown. And before you rant, I just want to reiterate to people once again, like, as much as we've been talking about streaming, like, we are all for community building, direct to fan, owning the communication with your fans. Like, that's pretty much my entire music career. So as we have these conversations about streaming, or rant about streaming, and just trying to get the information correct, like, we're all for that. Whether you use Even, whether you use Bandcamp, whether you use Patreon, there's so many tools to go direct to fans. And I love that. Everybody, if you have a community, should be taking advantage of that as well.
Wait a minute, Dame. I heard that every time a rapper was exploited by a streaming platform, you got a $500,000 check. This was in the comment section, so I don't make this stuff up. It's verified. It's in the comment section.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I get that, I did kind of go hard, but it's really just trying to get people to understand the truth about streaming. I don't think it's a perfect system. I would like artists to get paid as much as you guys dream of, but I just want to get the facts out there about streaming, because there's a lot of misinformation and people pushing agendas and leaning into their biases, and they're selling other things, so they're kind of, it's not as bad as the picture that some people are painting. So that's the only reason we've been having that conversation. But I was just on the phone yesterday with the owner of a text marketing platform called FanBucks, which was formerly known as Fan Connect, planning out the strategy for our upcoming web series, because with Big Job, we're going to be selling that series direct to fans. And we have a whole promo campaign using text marketing and getting phone numbers and going direct to fans. So if anybody thinks that I'm anti that, it's ridiculous. It's pretty much, like I said, what I've been doing my entire career. But anyway, Payne, rant away.
Well, even the artists that you put me onto, because a lot of people are like, well, Dame only knows artists who are successful because of who he is, and that's why he has a bias. Even the artists that you link me with that are 2Lost affiliated, who are getting a lot of streams, like the guy, I don't want to get other names wrapped up in this conversation because they have nothing to do with it, but there was that rapper that you linked me up with last night, and his social media was clearly well thought out and planned. His content looked great. I mean, I don't know how many artists are just living on Spotify. When I interviewed Eldre, and I can say his name because that's a public interview. When I interviewed Eldre, it was very clear that he was using other sources of traffic to funnel people to his streaming. So it would be incredible. People are really upset about the streaming conversation. I was tweeting about the reality of streaming royalty flows, and people were still upset at that. I don't understand why people let their emotions override their logic. But of course, that's a question as old as humanity itself, I'm sure. So, I understand that it's an emotional conversation and that people put their blinders on, but ultimately it's because of ignorance. I don't think anyone fully understands how the music business works, what royalty streams actually exist, how streaming actually pays out. Because, to understand how streaming pays out is to understand intellectual property laws and basically understand the entire payment and licensing and IP structure of the music business, which in my opinion is pretty freaking simple compared to being a doctor, a nurse, a lawyer. This is pretty simple stuff, but people do not understand it and apparently refuse to learn it. And so as a result, when we try to have these conversations, instead of information, all they can offer is emotion, which again, I understand artists are emotional, but if we don't have that music business know-how to go along with our emotion, we just look like we're throwing a tantrum because there will literally be nothing productive about whatever we are engaging with. That's not my rant. All the stupid tweets and people threatening me. I was literally getting threats because I was posting about streaming this week. That's nothing compared to this. I'm actually upset about this. So start things out, right? Spotify will stop paying any royalties to most artists pretty soon, right? Wrong. It was a lie. Spotify and every writer on virtually every media outlet who covered this story lied to us about this new Spotify royalty threshold. And we are so stupid, I'm including myself in that because I was upset about the threshold, that we just ran with it. And the music journalists who write for these media don't know shit about the music business. So they write about it. They don't know what they're actually writing about. So they put out all these articles and I'm looking at them like, oh, well, these are on legitimate websites. And I'll call these out. Number one, let me share. Can I share my screen? Yeah. Because this is actually really dangerous. So here we are on these big ass ads. Here we are on Forbes. Most obvious is Spotify's decision not to pay any royalties on tracks that don't reach a minimum threshold of plays. Any royalties. That's Forbes. What does United Masters say? Starting in early 2024, a song needs at least 1,000 streams in a year to start making money. What does that mean? That means you do not make money as an artist until you hit 1,000 streams. I could go on. I have a lot of these articles. The next one would have been The Verge, which is insane because these are all legitimate sources of information. However, there was only one journalist that I found that actually asked the right question, because I kept asking over and over again, how is this legal? Because there are laws about public broadcast. You can't just publicly broadcast copyrighted material. And people were like, well, Spotify exists in Sweden, you idiot. They're exempt from international law. Bitch, walk away from the conversation if that's what you honestly believe is factual. There were other people who were like, well, if you upload it to Spotify, they can do whatever they want with it. No. Again, there are broadcast laws. There are laws. If you didn't know this, radios, venues, bars, jukeboxes, TV networks, they all have to pay when they play copyrighted music. That's what a performance royalty is. I think the problem is people don't understand what streaming is. They think there's a streaming royalty. There's no such thing as a streaming royalty. A streaming royalty is actually the master royalty for the recorded music, 10% to the performance royalty, 10% to the mechanical. This is according to Billboard. I don't know how perfect these numbers are. I have trust issues with everything, but I know that at very least, the typical stream is split up among these various copyrights. Recorded music is one copyright, underlying composition is the other. If it's
How do
non-interactive, there's
how do
sound
they come up
exchange.
with these percentages? Is this just like arbitrary?
Well, I think this is probably based on a typical interactive stream and a typical artist deal. So generally speaking, this is the royalty breakdown on the master for what most artists sign for.
Well, I'm saying like the 80-20 split with the mechanicals and performance. Is that like, did they break it up similar to how like a radio stream would be? Is that why it's like that? I'm wondering about those numbers.
Well, I think that's what the labels agreed to with Spotify. And that's why songwriters are so upset, because if you're a songwriter and you write music for an artist, you're really getting jerked because you're only getting those two 10% splits. You're not getting any of the bulk. So the labels are always going to be winning, of course, because they're the one that negotiated these deals. The article, the Kristen Robinson article, which was also in Billboard, cleared things up and said, no, Spotify will continue paying mechanical and performance royalties. Why? Here's what she writes. In the United States, the royalty rates that songwriters and publishers can charge for the composition side of things are controlled by a government entity known as the Copyright Royalty Board. Every 5 years, the statutory rate structure for songwriters and publishers is renegotiated with the National Music Publishers Association, as well as Nashville Songwriters Association International, and other groups and individuals who represent the music industry's fight to raise rates. That's another conversation, why the rates haven't gone up. But the fact of the matter is, these are laws. You can't just not pay these. And so Spotify is paying them. But every article written about this said no royalties. You saw it yourself. Spotify will not be paying any royalties. When in reality, of the 3 royalties that they typically pay, they will only stop paying 1. So why the fuck are all these?
It is the biggest one, though.
It's the biggest one. I don't give a fuck. If you come to my house and say, hey, I stole your TV. I'm like, well, give me my TV back. No, I'm keeping it. And then I realized that you stole a diamond ring too. And you're like, well, that was way smaller than that TV. But you still stole the shit. Fuck you. So why would you report that? It just, none of it makes sense. I'm upset about it because now, I'm spreading the articles. I got to walk this shit back. If you're a music journalist and this is how you write, get another job. Matter of fact, become a fucking rapper. Yeah. And deal with this shit yourself. Actually experience this. You have one job as a music journalist, getting to the truth. And you can't even get to that.
Yeah, I don't know if the truth is the top priority of any journalist these days.
That's the truth.
But yeah, I mean, I think people will still hear this, but they're still taking the master side. And, I wish they wouldn't have done this. We talked about this a few episodes ago. To me, it wasn't like a big battle that I would get my picket, go on strike for or anything like that. But I just think from a PR perspective, it was stupid. So I don't understand if it was just to give more money to the majors. And it's not all money just going to major record labels, but I just don't understand why I would like to be in the meeting, fly on the wall, and why they even did this, because just from a PR perspective, it's terrible.
Well, I have a conspiracy theory on that. I actually truly believe that because of looking at all of Spotify's PR, it's been terrible. It's basically just been Daniel Ek, someone reporting Spotify's about to do something evil, and then Daniel Ek coming out going, "Yes, we is," and then you're like, "Wait a minute, you're not even playing damage control?" Nope. So it's true that you're fucking over artists. Yep. Deal with it, because they know that the consumers choose Spotify. Because why wouldn't you? Daniel Ek is the Pirate Bay guy. He's giving people free shit. So that's where the consumers are. And because the consumers are on his platform, the musicians are not going to leave. He has amazing lucrative deals with the record labels. So those big artists that are generating the bulk of the revenue on the platform are not going to leave. He's already a multi-billionaire, so if things crash tomorrow, he'll be fine. But my thought is, every time he makes a statement, he alienates artists. And the artists that he alienates, realistically, if I'm an artist and I'm on the fence and I'm like, maybe I want to take my music off streaming, if I'm making $4,000, even $1,000 a month on the Spotify platform, I'm probably going to stay on it because that $1,000 is significant. If I'm not hitting the threshold, I'm going to leave. I don't think Daniel cares about me if I'm not hitting the threshold. Honestly, I don't think Daniel cares about me, period. But he knows that if I leave and I'm not hitting the threshold, it's no skin off his back. He's probably saving money. Like Dame said in a couple episodes ago, he's probably saving money on server costs. So it's a win-win for him.
That's what I'm saying. It's a money play.
I mean, there's probably some cost savings associated with it, but I can't see why. Like, I mean, there's still going to be a lot of music uploaded to Spotify. I don't think people are going to take their tracks down.
No, but I just don't think he cares. I don't think he's being careful. I don't think he's trying to win the PR war at all. I don't even think he's concerned with public image at this point because it's just not a priority. He doesn't have to care about that. And in the meantime, all of us dumbass artists are sitting here reading articles that poison us with misinformation, and then we already don't know anything. You know, when you try to talk with anyone about, not anyone, like, you know, present company included, and the guests we have on know what they're talking about, but in terms of just having a conversation with the average artist, let alone the average consumer, forget about it. They don't know what the hell's going on. You ask somebody what a stream is, they're like, oh, it's what you get when, you know, when a song streams. Like, no. So ultimately, I don't see us making any progress if the masses of artists don't understand the basics of what is at play here. And again, it's easy. Look at a chart, understand IP law. There are only 2 copyrights. Just figure out, start at the top of the tree and then just read all the branches. 2 copyrights. That's the music business.
Yeah, there is a book called The Plain and Simple Guide to Music Publishing that you can grab on Amazon if any of this is confusing. But what I also know too is, like, if all this stuff discourages independent artists from trying to stream well, like, major labels would love that. I mean, not that should, like, play into your decision of whether or not you want to try to drive up streams or not, but like, if for example, like, independent artists got discouraged and started doing other things besides trying to drive up streams, major labels would love it. They're already making, I think there's been some discrepancy in this number, but they're making anywhere from $2 to $3 million an hour on streaming.
That's another article that I was pissed off about because I shared it and then some dude was disputing it, and I'm like, how are you disputing it? It's in the article. And then
whatever the number is, it is it's
substantial. It's $1.5 million an hour. So the labels are making $1.5 million an hour. The article that I shared said it was more like $3 million an hour. Somehow they decided that including merchandise and a bunch of other stuff in that figure made sense. It doesn't make sense. Off of just raw streams, it's 1.5 million. I'm sorry for tweet. I amended my tweet by saying no, I was wrong. It was 1.5 million.
It could be merch sold on the Spotify app, which I think would make sense then.
And
yeah,
you think that much merch runs through the Spotify app?
I think for super fans, like if you're looking at the top 1 to 10% of the most streamed artists in the world, then yeah, I think it could definitely contribute. Especially because they're selling like vinyls and exclusives. Like I'm the top 10% of like a handful of artists, and I get the emails for like the exclusive merch that they offer. And I think if I was more of a mass consumer, I would be interested in some of those things. But I don't know. I'm just saying that if they're including merchandise, I could see it being merchandise on the app. And considering how expensive the merch is versus a stream, I could see that being several more $1 million, right? Because you're looking at a vinyl being like anywhere from $45 to $90
Yeah.
versus the dollar amount of a stream, which is, I don't know what the label's rate is, but if we're looking at our rate is 0.001 cent, per stream, and you sell a $90 vinyl, then I definitely could see that contributing to the hourly rate being double or triple what originally Payne is saying.
Well, the problem is we don't know and no one is telling us. So these articles that give us information don't give us full information and don't give us correct information. And those of us consuming the articles for whom this information would really be transformative don't care enough to try to seek that information out. It's terribly upsetting that no one else was everyone's fighting about streaming, but no one's that I could see virtually was asking those questions. No one was asking, wait, how does this reconcile with this law? What about compulsory licensing? What's going on? Something's not right. People weren't asking those questions. It was more just like, well, fuck streaming, or let's shame artists who are getting under 1,000 plays because you guys are bums anyway. Stupid ass conversation. Those are the only options I get. I get the people who are just angry and upset, or the people who are self-loathing and just taking this opportunity to shit on their colleagues.
I feel like we came across one article where somebody was suing them for this very thing, but I agree, Peter.
Yeah.
Me and you are the only ones who were like, yo, how is this even legal? And I get that it's still such a small amount of money, but it's more encouraging to me to know that they still have to play by some sort of rules, because originally it just seemed like because it was their platform, they could set whatever statute of limitation.
Right.
I personally do. This makes me again still feel like it's a money play. I think we'll know in a year if Spotify is then profitable. I know that they've cut several employees at what is like 17% of their employees at the end of this year, but I know they did cuts earlier this year as well. So even though I think that budget cuts help, you ultimately gain profitability from making more money versus spending less money. So we'll see if there's a significant jump, then this is exactly, as I said, when we first started talking about this, it seems like a money play. It seems like a way for them to, get their IPO above water. And I agree with you, Payne. It feels very much like, like the Elon Musk and the Jeff Bezos of the world, where it's like, you don't actually care about the person creating the content or giving, like the thing that makes it substantial. It's more about being able to move people. It's like, that's how I feel like, well, I want you over here, so you're going to go over here. I think that it's more of a power thing than it is about equity or rights or care and concern for the art. But that's, I guess, neither here nor there. But I do want to address the notion, you were like, you tweeted, if there's no money in streaming, then how come, like whatever the tweet was, labels are making anywhere from $1 million to $3 million an hour. So there's definitely money in streaming. I still have a problem with that, because it doesn't mean that there's money in streaming for artists. You know what I'm saying? Just like you said that the labels made the deal with Spotify, which is what the rates are, the 80-20 split. I would never be able to go to Spotify and say, hey, for all the artists I represent, here's the percentage the split that we should make. We actually want the split to be more like 50-50 to honor the independent songwriters that work with us. So I do think there's money in streaming, but there's not money for, let me not say not, I don't want to say absolutes. There is money in streaming. There is not as much money, nearly as much money in streaming for independent artists as there is for labels or label side artists. So that's why I feel like that tweet almost is misleading, because I know you weren't trying to go down that route, but like saying, it's almost like being like, well, we're not going through inflation because Home Depot had its most profitable year. Or we're not going through a recession because Home Depot had its most profitable year. It's like that corporate company doesn't affect my day-to-day life. And I think that saying that the major labels are making this much per hour is proof that there's money in streaming, I think is almost like a false narrative to choose. Do you know what I'm saying?
So you're
I agree
saying
with you if I had said that there's money in streaming, so why are artists still, well, even that, I think, because the sentiment of the tweet would be much like somebody speaking on Home Depot. It's all about how you frame it, right? So if someone says someone, probably someone conservative who's pro corporation would say, this is great, Home Depot is making record profits, how is it there can't be a recession? Someone else would say, wow, look, there's all this money being made by these corporations, but the people at the bottom are the ones that are suffering financially, economically. I'm more in the latter category because you hear people saying all the time, there's no money in streaming. I don't look at it as different from the conversation that we were having before streaming, or like right around when streaming started becoming the dominant platform for music consumption, where people were saying, there's no money in the music business. The music business is losing money. And it was kind of one of those narratives that would shut artists up. Because if there's no money in the music business and we're not seeing it, okay, same with streaming. If there's no money in streaming and we're not getting any money from streaming, we have no reason to complain because there's no money. The reality is there are billions and billions of dollars in the music business, period, but in the streaming world. So where does that leave us? It's kind of like a ... I just don't want the narrative to be there's no money in streaming. There is money in streaming. Now, what are we going to do about it? It was more like, and I understand that people, that was the tweet that I got threats over, where people were like, I don't want to talk about it, but it was a incendiary tweet. I didn't mean it to be, but again, it's Twitter, and I didn't make it perfectly crystal clear that I'm not on the side of the people hoarding the money. I'm just saying the money's there. If we talk about the wealth hoarding in general, the money's there. It's like people saying, oh, if there are people hungry in the world. Well, if there's not enough food, if there's not enough money to feed them, we're shit out of luck. The reality is there's plenty of money and plenty of resources, right? So knowing that will inform us as to what we need to do next, hopefully. But it just became an argument, and it degraded into some pretty ugly language.
But I'm still trying to understand. I'm still trying to understand Erin's point, because I don't think there's much of a difference between like the streaming royalty rates that even we pay out on 2 Lost versus the streaming royalty rates that major labels get. So I say that there's money in streaming because I've received it and I see it. Like I don't need to. And I talk to artists every week that say that their primary revenue source is streaming. That's more to me evidence than whatever the majors are doing. But are you saying that they get a different royalty rate than what we pay out? If it is different, it's not different by much.
They do get a different rate. There's articles about it, but major labels, especially the big 3, have a different rate because I'm not going to put my opinion into this, but they get a different rate. That's like,
but it's not different by much.
How do you know that?
Because I work for 2 Lost. I don't.
Yeah, but 2 Lost. I'm saying 2 Lost is different than Warner. You think that 2 Lost and Warner
on the next episode, if I'm allowed to share it, I'll share exactly what the differences are in royalty rates. But it's not much different. It's not like major labels, or it's not like Payne's tweet is saying like, hey, major labels are raking in all this money because they have a much higher royalty rate than you little independent artists.
No. Just to be clear, what I'm saying in the tweet is, this is my Curtis and Dame interrupt Payne moment, where I'm interrupting Dame to clarify what I actually mean. I'm saying there's money in streaming. The majority is obviously going to the labels. That's the tweet I posted explicitly stated how much the major labels, and there are only 3 of them, are making off of streaming. So if there's money in streaming, artists should look at, in my opinion, artists should look at that and not be discouraged by I mean, it's discouraging. How do I say? All I'm saying, there's money out there. If artists aren't getting it, there's a problem, and it has to do with the way it's distributed.
Major labels are making more money primarily because they own the copyrights to the biggest songs that are streaming on the platform.
Yeah, and then that's why then I posted the other figure where it showed how majors are making the majority of it, and then I break it down, and people are still mad at it. So I don't know what to do if what I'm saying is factual, and then I'm presenting additional information as to how that could be. Like, I'm not saying this is how it is, let's celebrate. I'm saying this is how it is. We need to figure out how to make it work for ourselves, and whatever that takes. If it's a boycott, can we get it together? If it's legislation, can we get it together? If it's a more diverse revenue model, can we get that together? All three of those options, and it's not that those are the only three. There are many options that I haven't even considered. I'm sure there are a lot of brilliant people out there, but all the options involve us knowing what is going on and learning and understanding. If all we're doing is reacting and getting emotional about it, yeah, cool. You get some anger out on Elon Musk's platform, but that's it. No one wins off that.
So Dame, to address what you're saying, my delineation isn't that the labels are making a higher royalty rate. I think their royalty rate is higher, and it could be significantly higher. I don't know. I think it's probably higher than what independent distributors are making as well. But I don't know that. I can't substantiate that. But my assumption is that they're going to negotiate the best deal for themselves. So that's where that's coming from. But my reference to pain is more, I just want to read the tweet. You explaining it makes sense to me now, but the way that it read looks to be in light of this current conversation and the current nature of what people are saying. It's either there's no money in streaming, or there is money in streaming, y'all just aren't getting it, right? But the y'all just aren't getting it part seems to sit squarely on independent artists aren't getting it because you're not streaming enough, which, not to say that Dame is the big bad wolf, but that's like, Dame is like, I know plenty of artists who are streaming a lot and making a ton of income. So when you said there's money in streaming because the labels are making this much, I was like, what does that have to do with me? It's not like I'm making that money. So I'm just going to read it just for clarity so that people understand the context. You said there's money in streaming, millions a day. Oh no, that's the wrong one. Sorry. The original one says, if there's no money in streaming, why are major labels making $3 million off of it every hour? And now you said it could be $1 million, 1.5, whatever. There's money in streaming, lots of it. Anyone telling you that there isn't is just lying so that they don't have to explain to unsigned artists that they can get it. So, or how they can get it. So for me, reading that tweet, it kind of felt like you were saying, again, back to, you just have to stream more. Now hearing what you're saying is like, there's money here. We have to figure out how to get it. I completely get it. But when I read it, it just sounded almost like the whole bullshit, pull yourself up by your bootstraps argument. That's what, because it was like, well, if
I understand that. No, you're right. So if anyone's feeling like that's what I'm saying,
yeah, that's how. So when people were upset, that's why I even commented. I'm like, I never look at myself economically based off of what major corporations are able to do, because they're playing by a game I'm not invited to. So I get what you're saying now. It's almost like there's money here. It's not being dispensed to us. We need to think about a reasonable resolve. So, and
my problem was,
and we need to figure it out.
Yeah, and my problem was with how the conversation's being framed, where people would just say there's no money in streaming. And I've been seeing that narrative come up again and again. And it's letting the labels off the hook. It's dismissing the entire system to just favor a platitude that's empty and doesn't help artists. Telling artists there's no money in streaming doesn't help them. It's as helpful as saying a music career is impossible. Obviously, a music career is not impossible. But people love saying that all the time. They'll say, "Yeah, you can't make money as a musician." Why? Because the Satanists, because the Illuminati, because the corporatists, this and that. And it's like there are a million ways. Granted, yes, I'm never, which is like, damn, why were people attacking me? That because there were people that followed me that were upset. I'm just like, give me the benefit of the doubt, because I've never once, been a bootlegger for the labels. I've just been the guy that's always said what I believed to be true. Sometimes I spread false information from these articles, and then I apologize for it. But I've never been the pro label, no matter what, capitalist. If you're not getting it, you're a bum type of person. I'm the, let's take this information and build power with it type of person. So I understand why people reacted poorly to it. I tried to provide context with the second tweet. Once something's out there, it's out there.
I feel like when people say there's no money in streaming, though, again, going back to like just our worldview, like clearly there's money in every industry, but like for the people, there's no money. Like, and I know Dame disagrees with this, but for the vast majority of people, which again, for the vast majority of artists, they're not making money. But for the vast majority of artists streaming, I would say, even from my experience, which is like what I can't take from my experience, the majority of full-time artists I know, I'm talking about full-time artists. I'm not talking about artists who are still trying to figure it out, tipping point. I'm talking about the majority of full-time artists that I know aren't making the majority of their living from streaming.
I'm in that category. I don't make the majority of anything off streaming.
So that's why
would the same artists have made the majority of their income slanging CDs? Would they have made the majority of their income? Like
that's not my point. My point, Dame, is that saying there are people making hundreds of thousands of dollars off of streaming is just as valid as me saying you're probably not gonna make a living off of streaming. Like we can both say the same thing and they both be true. That's why I'm saying
you're not gonna make a living as an artist. Like
no. I'm saying, like, if most of the full-time artists that I know are not making I'm talking about most of the full-time artists that I know are making 10 to 20% of their living off of streaming. So I'm saying, and these are full-time touring, whatever. If I'm saying that, even with Drake, if you break down his financials, I doubt the majority of that is coming from streaming. But so I'm saying that both points are just as valid. So if somebody comes and says there's no money in streaming, I don't feel like they're saying there's no money in streaming. They're saying for us, the smaller, lower people on the totem pole, there's no money here for us. Do you know what I'm saying? And I get that you know plenty of people that there is, but I'm not invalidating that. But you can't just take what I'm saying and be like, well, that's not valid because of X, Y, and Z. I'm
not telling you that. I'm not telling you that what you're seeing is false. It's a very real reality. What I'm telling you is there are a lot of artists that have figured this out. There are some artists that make music that do well in streaming because of the type of music they make and how it resonates with the algorithm. Ollie Joseph, like I said, has like 10,000 followers on Instagram, but he just posted his Spotify Wrapped and he has like 50 million streams, or between 40 and 50 million streams. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's going to be available for everybody, so come get some of this streaming money. I'm saying that there is a lot of money in streaming for all of the other reasons that I mentioned. Finance companies don't come when there's no money. Like it's just that's not a thing. So yes,
I know, but
there are artists.
There's no money in streaming. They're not talking about they're not talking about the outliers or the labels. They're talking, most people are speaking to the majority. That's all I'm saying. Because I
But
feel
it's
like
all,
making
but
this
everybody,
delineation.
if you're successful selling CDs on the corner, you're an outlier. If you were successful in the iTunes era, you're an outlier. If you're successful in streaming, you're an outlier. That's all I'm trying to tell you. Like, even Reverie came back, said something on, and she's a hip hop artist in the LA area, and she kind of said, I don't want to put, I can't remember exactly what but ultimately she was saying that a lot of people are like flexing their numbers, but don't really have money in real life. Like, she does shows, she does merch, blah, blah, blah. However you build your business, you got to build your business. If streaming is available to you and your music does well and you can be consistent, then boom, then it's going to be fruitful for you if you can build a catalog that streams well. Like, you're starting to tell me things that I did not say. Like,
It
I'm
just seems like you're insinuating that, though. Do you know what I'm saying? Because whenever I say, like, well, that's not my experience, you're like, well, I meant this, this, this. I'm just saying they're both super valid. Even when I sent you the tweet from my
and I've
homegirl, you
said
were
that
like,
from jump though. Like, I've always said that if streaming can be 0%, it can be 100%. It's going to change for every artist. Like, the artists that you work with, obviously it's 10 to 20%. Like, there's artists that are 100%. But all I'm telling artists is, don't just say, "Oh, there's no hope for me in streaming." It might be. There's people making a lot of money on streaming. The people that
Well,
you
I think
know,
people want this single solution plan where it's like, all
yeah.
right, sell merch. Okay, I'm gonna sell merch. Yeah, but what about the other stuff? Or streaming? Okay, I'm gonna sell streaming. That's why I don't favor these absolutist narratives, because people will say all the money's in touring. Hear that all the time. Touring is hard as shit. I would rather. Oh shit, we lost Dame. See, this is what happens when you start talking about streaming. They come get you. I
I'll be right back. I gotta move rooms.
Okay. So, on the one hand, someone will say, let's just stick to touring. And in having this conversation about streaming, that narrative has come up a lot where someone will just say, you know what? All the money, the real money's in touring. Where do you come up with that figure? Have you ever toured? I've toured. I didn't lose money touring, but it was grueling. I would rather play the Spotify algorithm, because at very least, realistically, I'd rather do both, and I like touring a little more because I've had more luck. But if it were like an all or nothing thing, gun to my head, I would rather play the Spotify algorithm, because at least I'm not on the road with all these expenses and overhead. Streaming, I don't really need that much overhead for it to get started and established. Touring, no matter what level of touring, the travel cost is always going to be there. You know what I mean? So people just want to speak in absolutes, whether it's there's no money in streaming or there's all the money in streaming. There's no money in touring, there's all the money in touring. There's no money in merch, all the money's in merch. Or people saying we need to, a lot of people were saying we need to go back to how things were with physical CDs when artists were making money. Like, look, man, the same split that you see on Spotify is the same split artists were getting for CDs. They were still getting that 16%, and the label was still getting the majority of that. Those
yeah, that
deals
was just like
are
more money in music more money in that form of music at the
in
time.
that form. Yeah.
So
So
people conflate that. So I agree with you.
yeah. So it's if in the label system, no matter what, in virtually all cases, not all, but in virtually all cases of an artist signing to a label and then using these platforms, the artist is always going to get the minority share of the money. That's just what it is. I'm not one of those people that's going to say, well, back in the day it was better. It wasn't. Not in terms of the splits. I mean, if back in the day was better, why
Then
do
there's
we
no
have Straight Outta Compton? Why do we have the TLC movie? Why do we have millions and millions of specifically black creators with zero after they've generated millions of dollars to these labels? Like, that's been going on for decades and decades and decades and decades. So, one, streaming is no different. I think the only difference is that in a weird way now you can be unsigned and have access to that pool of money. It's limited access. You don't have the same, I don't have the same kind of access that UMG does. And if UMG sees that I'm starting to gain that kind of access, they're going to try to co-opt that by signing me because they want a piece of that money. Even the small independent labels and, you know, like the folks that Rick Ross and Meek Mill worked with, they're still corporate entities. They're just smaller ones, and they give more favorable deals, but they want in on that money. Everyone wants in on that money. It's the music business. All I'm saying with my tweet is the money's out there. Let's have a conversation about how to get it in the pockets and the hands of the creators. I am absolutely not. Please, please, please do not interpret my tweet as me saying pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I'm not criticizing people for not making millions of dollars off of streaming every hour like the labels are. Never have I indicated that that's where I fall in the debate.
I think you clarifying that right now was helpful, and even Dame clarifying, because I'm not saying that you have specifically said, Dame, this is the only way, because you have doubled down on being like building your audience, whatever. You even started the pod like that. I think I was misunderstanding your narrative because it seemed like every time we would bring up somebody who would say, like, again, like there's no money in streaming or whatever, you would be like, well, I know this artist who's making $250,000 a month. And I'm like, I work with outliers too, and my outliers aren't doing that. But I get what you're saying now. You're just saying like you want to continuously highlight the streaming outliers so that people don't try to say that it's impossible, therefore I shouldn't try for it. Like I get that now. I just felt like when I kept hearing it, it just almost felt like you were saying like, well, music is an outlier sport, which I agree. Therefore, like these outliers are winning because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm just like, I also have outliers that I know and that I represent. And it's like, that's still only a portion of our business model. But I get you now.
I mean, and that's probably attributed to your job being able to help them round out their business. Like I said, like I know now it seemed like even you were kind of painting me to be like this caper for streaming. It's a big.
I'm not trying to. I just feel like you've like been like really highlighting people. You're like, well, I know this person, and I'm saying like, I think that my artists have phenomenal like communication with their fans. I think they're doing a really good job. It's just like we just don't make a crazy amount from streaming. Do you know what I'm saying? Like 500, like we're struggling to break through the 500,000 monthly listener situation, even with consistent drops. And so I'm just like, I still don't know what the formula is to break that. So for me, sometimes it feels like hearing it was almost like, well, if you didn't say this, but it almost felt like if you try and you hope for Spotify to work out, like it can work out. And I'm like, I don't doubt that it could, but I just, in all my years of trying to work it out on Spotify, I haven't been able to break. I have one artist that I've worked with that hit the $1 million threshold, and that's it. And that's in my whole career. I don't know, I guess since Spotify has been around like what, 8 or 9 years.
Or $1 million threshold? You say $1 million
No,
threshold?
the million monthly. No, the million monthly listeners threshold. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
And we have some songs, we have like, occasionally like we'll get an outlier song where we'll get 30 million. I have one song right now that's sitting at 100 million, you know what I'm saying, from a creator that I used to represent, but that was after the song had been out for 8 years, you know what I'm saying? So that's a whole different situation, because that's progressive over the years. So like, no, but I hear what you're saying. I'm not trying, I don't think you're the caper for streaming or like that, like for Spotify, but I do feel like I was consistently hearing you highlight artists who are streaming well as like, yeah, they're outliers. We're in an outlier business. So therefore, and I'm just like, yeah, but my outliers aren't winning on Spotify, but they're still winning. You know, like one of them's winning with live shows, another one's winning with sync, other ones are winning with local experiences that they're building. You know what I'm saying?
Well, however you win, I think that's amazing. But what else can I do when somebody tells me that there's no money in streaming or it's not possible? Like outside of telling you that I've made money in streaming myself, like I think it's natural to just start letting people know and telling their stories of people that have made money in streaming. Every artist that I've I'm only on like interview 10, but every interview that I've had on the Independent Living podcast, streaming is a healthy portion of their business. So, I don't know what else to do other than if somebody tells me, hey, there's no money in streaming, I can tell you that finance companies are getting involved. I can show you artists that are making. I can tell you that Two Loss is paying $5 or $6 million out every single month. Like, at the end of the day, if you don't change your mind, it's better for the artists that do believe in it because it's a little less competition. So,
This is like my tweet. I basically became Dame for a couple of days. I was like, damn, people hate me. And I didn't even think I said anything all that bad. The one thing that that I think Dame and I have actually disagreed about is the threshold and who it's going to benefit. But I don't want to relitigate that. If you're cool with it, can we transition very quickly into the reggaeton lawsuit?
Sure. Yeah, you're gonna have to update me on. You're gonna have to brief me and the audience on exactly what that is. So, because I didn't dive.
This is
All right,
actually
so
very wild, Dame. I can't wait for Payne to break it down because the more I read about it, the more I'm like, I can't believe this.